sorry about that. That's take two. That's take one. Sorry, let's do take two. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Good Anime Palette Podcast.
You don't need to tell people what we've been doing. You just go straight into a recording.
Okay, fine. This is, fine. Fuck it. This is Good Anime Palette Podcast, Bits and Pieces number 9. I am your co-host, Jason. I'm joined, mindfucked Will over here, who I gave him, a little insight on some of the stupidity that is on the internet, and his mind was just, like, going in circles.
I understood, like, the stupidity in the beginning, but then the lack of direction afterwards was just kind of like, I really didn't know where this was going, and therefore the vibes were kind of off. But,
right. But I tell you what, I had another topic in mind, and I think this one actually has a lot of meat to it, all right? So, every season when we look over the new seasonal stuff, there is undoubtedly going to be bangers, stuff that we didn't expect to be good, and stuff that looks pretty bad, right? I would say that every time that number of animes that we end up watching or that ends up premiering is extremely high.
But yeah, I mean, like, if we're going to be doing, like, seasonal premieres, we want to be able to watch as much to be able to get a more objective perspective on the season. And then after we do the premieres, it's just really what we want to keep watching. There's obviously stuff in the summer season that I will continue to watch, and then there's others where, like, I'm happy to put this on hold or kind of forget about it. At whether or not I continue to watch it, I don't feel like I would lose out much.
And I would say the number of animes that premieres that from beginning to end for each season is around, like, 40 to 60, right?
Yeah.
And we have received news constantly. We don't report on all of them, but where Studio ABC gets shut down, Studio ABC gets overworked, animators get underpaid, overworked, mangakas take health hiatus, right? Then you add in the fact that now, with the merger for Crunchyroll and Funimation, I seem to now really see the oversaturation and accessibility of anime has only increased over, like, I don't know, the past, like, 5 to 10 years, right? And now it is starting to get to the point where, is it really that good to have that much oversaturation? We always talk about, like, who would watch this show? Is there really an audience for it? Why is there a second season when this isn't even a blip on our radar, right? And I was just wondering, sort of, not only what is your take on anime being oversaturated and overabundant, and it potentially, in my opinion, harming the industry as a whole, but now with streaming being sort of the main way that people consume anime, and now even manga to a point, accessibility becomes a huge, huge thing to consider when you are a streaming platform or any platform, whether it is Bookwalker, where you get things wholesale, or whether it is Crunchyroll. What do you think?
Well, that's kind of a given, to be fair. I mean, like, when you're talking about Crunchyroll, talking about Netflix, talking about Hulu, whatever streaming platform there is, the main thing, it's never really about quality anymore. It's about quantity, because if you have enough of a number of series on your platform, then hopefully you'll be able to find that gem that can propel your platform. But it's also, like, it's kind of hard now, where back in the day it was, if you wanted to, watch The Sopranos, if you wanted to watch Game of Thrones, you had to go through HBO. It's a little bit different now with the fact that it's easier to get licensing for different series, but unless you have a real banger of an exclusive, it's not like people are going to only watch your platform just so they can only watch that one thing, because once you're done watching it, like, what do you do afterwards? So there needs to be an extra plethora of other things to go along with it. Yeah, you end up finding the same stuff over and over and over again, but I don't think variety is necessarily a bad thing. So imagine, like, you go to, like, a supermarket and you find, like, 50 brands of the same cereal. Of course, there's going to be one or two that you like, but you ignore the rest, but it doesn't mean that, like, you want the others to not exist. It's fine for them to have, because whatever happens to work for you might work for someone else. So, yeah, you could have 50 different isekais going in a year, And you and I have already seen enough isekais this year alone to be like, yeah, there's probably out of that 50, maybe 4, 5 isekais would be down to recommend. If there was like a supernatural like mystery and it's like maybe only 10 in a year, chances are we'll probably find one that works out well. It's good to have like a safety net, I guess, in a sense, to have more than just 1 or 2 good things. You need to have some mediocre stuff and some bad stuff because again, it just comes down to how you perceive it. For you and me, we have like specific tastes as to each genre, as to each trope, and if something meets those expectations, great. We'll happily preach it, share it, keep watching it, and if it's not our cup of tea, then we'll just ignore it, put it to the side, tell people to stay away from it.
Right. I understand that. And obviously, this is a very complex, multifaceted issue, and I'm not going to assume that you and I have the solution that solves this really complex issue. And some might even argue it's not an issue, it's just a matter of natural progression of things.
Yeah, I think that's just it, right? Like if your platform only had the good shit, at that point you didn't have to think about, well, what really then defines good? Like what becomes the average then? If your expectations, like the bar gets raised that high, then surely the only way is down afterwards. And so it's not to say that like companies make a calculated decision to release bad stuff to prepare to build the good stuff. Like it's not that simple. I don't think the companies are that stupid to be like, let's just make like 50 subpar products so that we can really focus on the one good product. We have seen it occasionally with some companies. Say for example, like technology companies releasing phones, like how Samsung releases new phones every year, but they end up releasing a new model that's cheaper. It ends up cannibalizing their own premium models and that stuff like that. Yeah, sometimes there are mistakes that happen like that. But generally, I feel that it's just you want to be able to push content. That's what the whole point in having these streaming platforms are as well. It's for the access of content. And if you don't have enough of it, then it just doesn't really warrant the asking price of the subscription fees.
Right. So it's not necessarily the problem of having good stuff. It's just having stuff so then you stay on the platform and unsubscribe and don't unsubscribe.
You're talking real loud, by the way.
Sorry.
So, yeah. So if I was to talk like this, that's how loud you are.
My bad.
Basically, like it's not like a problem in my opinion. It's just a consequence of people's expectations and people's tastes. Like think about like how many like daytime dramas there are, or how many like trash reality TV shows there are. Most of them are incredibly boring. A lot of them are really shit. But they're also some of the most viewed TV series of all time. Like whenever people talk about Love Island or talk about some soap that's happening in the daytime or talking about Selling Sunset or, Bling Empire, if you really, really look into it, the scripts are shit. It's not like all that interesting, but there's enough there for people to latch onto and make it popular. And then people will just, talk to the end of the world about it. So sometimes it's not like a simple thing as to have quote unquote good stuff. It's just having stuff. And if enough people talk about it, like it, subscribe to it, I don't see like why it wouldn't be a good business decision. In the end, like these platforms aren't really there to showcase the best of media, the best of entertainment. In the end, their business is just to make money.
Right. And I think we are now at the point where there are not only Netflix that came on the scene relatively within the past like 10, 15 years. I think it used to be pretty much Crunchyroll, right? And then Funimation. Like these were the...
You're talking about specifically anime, right?
Yeah, anime at this point, right? It's just these two. Then now they merged, and then Netflix obviously came somewhere in between. And now Netflix anime is a thing, whether or not that's a good or bad thing. It's a thing nonetheless, right? But I think recently, even within the past, like the existence of this podcast, you have realized, and I've realized that all of a sudden Disney is like, yo, Time Machine Blues? Yo.
I mean, Summertime Render is on
Summertime
Disney+.
Render on Disney+. Oh, this is on Amazon Prime now. Or, hey, Hulu. Or
High Dive is picking up
High Dive with Sentai, right? And I remember watching Teasing Master Takagi-san and it being a very good show, but extremely inaccessible as the user, as the consumer. Because the first season is only on Crunchyroll. Is it? Yeah. No, the first season.
What Takagi-san?
Yeah, Takagi-san.
Season 1 on Crunchyroll, season 2 on Netflix, season 3 on
High Dive. Right. And how is it possible for the majority of people to consume it with all three services? That's just really difficult. Not everyone is like us to be that invested.
That therein lies, like, I guess the main issue that we should get into. And it's in the end, like, the business decisions supersede anything else.
Oh, no, I understand
so,
that.
Like, that's why it's, like, for them, like, whoever is, like, holding the licenses for Takagi-san, hey, props to you for being able to negotiate 3 separate contracts with these 3 monoliths of anime streaming, or just streaming in general. But I also understand that, like, it comes at the detriment of the customers, because then, like, if you were to be, like, a huge Takagi fan, and you wanted to watch everything, that would require 3 separate subscriptions. Or you go into illegal means, which in the end, like, that's a whole different thing, right?
Yeah. And so I don't really want to touch on that much, right?
Yeah.
But it is a reality.
But it is a byproduct of the access that we get to certain things. Like, back in the day when, like, music streaming was a thing, people didn't want to pay for subscriptions. People didn't want to buy CDs, so they had to use other, illegal means to be able to access it. I think there's just, in the end now, it's like, the power of consumption is the thing that really dictates how businesses run their model. And therefore, if it means that they're going to be able to inflate their platform with enough content so that people would subscribe and only subscribe to it, perfect. If they're just another subscription amongst others that family households use, even better. It just means that no matter what, there's always money coming in. And so therefore, it's like, I don't think that necessarily like Crunchyroll or Netflix or High Dive are missing a beat in which they're not having like that extra season of Takagi-san. They're not exclusively holding on to it. In the end, like, they'll know that, hey, if people do care enough about it and they have all 3 subscriptions, doesn't matter to me. Doesn't matter to us at all. Like, as long as they're paying the subscription fee, that's good. I get my $7 a month, whatever it may be for whichever platform you use. But I do also see where it's, like when you continuously inflate your platform with all this really mediocre shit, then it comes to the point where, are you really getting value out of the money you put into this platform?
Yeah.
You really, like, for the $7.99 or for however much you pay for your Netflix or your not your Amazon, your Disney Plus or whatever. It's like, once you've consumed all the stuff you need to, like, what else is there beyond just having a Netflix subscription?
I think recently on my Netflix coming soon, Naruto is coming soon, and I was just like, what? Okay,
yeah, they're bringing back the license again.
Yeah, so these things are obviously not set in stone. Like, things like could be an exclusive or it could be like a timed exclusive, right? There's all these like in between areas, but
I mean, there was a period when like Friends and Seinfeld were getting off of Netflix, as well as The Office. Not Seinfeld, The Office and Friends. And during the last 2 months after they made the announcement that the contracts were not going to be renewed, like, viewership just skyrocketed. And I get why, because the fandom for those series is incredibly high. But in the same way where it's like, if, for example, Naruto was to, after like a 5-year run, it's not going to be on Netflix anymore, I would assume that people would watch it all over again. I would assume so. But it's also, when I remember seeing Netflix anime, at the time it was Fullmetal Alchemist, Hunter x Hunter, Bleach, One Piece, Naruto.
So all the shonen jumps.
The typical like shonen classics. And it's like wonderful. It's cool to have anime on there. Problem is, I watched every single fucking one of them. And so, like, especially with Netflix not being anime centric, but definitely trying to pump out more content for the anime group, the anime circle, it's hard for them to really gauge what the quote unquote average Netflix user is, because how many of them are watching movies on Netflix? How many of them are watching daytime TV or like trash, like reality TV? How many of them are actually just using Netflix exclusively to watch anime? Like, I'm sure they have all the metrics. They definitely did, because that's the whole point.
Someone crunched the numbers or did something for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, for sure, like, it's the same way with Crunchyroll too, knowing what anime to license or what originals to get for the platform. That's in the end, like, they have to make those calculated decisions, because even, I said, right, it's all business driven, but they still need to be able to push out a good product. And so we've gotten to a point where I keep looking at the Netflix catalog, especially for anime. I do watch occasional like live action stuff, not the K dramas though. I don't really care about them anymore. But it's like when it comes to anime, like I've pretty much watched everything there is on there. And then the stuff that is there that I haven't watched, I'm not interested in it. Right? So does that sort of go around to sort of answering your question, or do you think it further just complicates it?
Well, it's less about answering a certain question as much as having a dialogue on, look, we don't have these numbers that these companies obviously have. Why would they release that? They would only release it when they need to boast. I mean, Netflix did that with like, hey, how many people actually watched quote unquote anime in the past year of our subscriber base? We reported on that before.
Well, let's move away from Netflix and actually onto Crunchyroll then.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Crunchyroll being like the main guy, the main girl out there who has all the anime, has all the like wonderful new releases, all the simulcasting, occasional originals as well.
But even then, they lost a lot of the Funimation stuff in the merger too.
Yes, but you would still say that like if it comes to a anime streaming platform, it's Crunchyroll.
Absolutely.
Right? So
like if there's one streaming service you need for anime, it is undoubtedly Crunchyroll.
But even the level of saturation like hits them too, right? Because in the end, like, you're going to have like 50 different like magical girl anime. You're going to have like 100,000 other like isekais. You're going to have a bunch of shonens on there. And yeah, they'll be doing the simulcast, but at the same time, it's like, as we've seen with our summer premiere or like our other seasonal premiere episodes, it's not always like you just jump into a season and it's always good stuff. And at the same time, the licensing thing, Crunchyroll's not going to be licensing all of them either. There's going to be some stuff that's on High Dive, some it's on Disney Plus, some on Netflix, some on Amazon, or some just exclusively in Japan.
I mean, I think as a consumer, it is extremely easy and naive to say like, well, if it was just all under one roof, then all is good. And I'm like, yeah, well, really, like, okay, sure, in this hypothetical world, yeah, then you can have access to everything. But reality doesn't work like that. And I'm just sort of saying that as a consumer of anime, right, comes to the point where, for example, my younger sister came back from the US and then she just went back. There was a time when she was like, yo, let's watch some anime. And then she was like, well, what about your boy Kong Ming? And I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. It's really good, actually. And then she said, is it on Crunchyroll? And then I said, no, it's on High Dive. And she's like, oh, hey, then I don't care. And I'm like, why? He's like, because I only care about what's on Crunchyroll. And I'm just like, even if I were to give you the account, it's like, yeah, it's Crunchyroll.
Well, I mean, that's an issue with any subscriber to any platform, right? Like, I have friends who only watch anime on Netflix. If it's not on Netflix, they're not going to watch it.
Oh, no.
And I told them, too, it's like, well, if you want to watch anime, then like Crunchyroll is the place to be. It's like, yeah, but I don't want to pay an extra subscription. I already have a Netflix account.
Fair enough, right?
It's just that. It's like, and they also have enough anime on Netflix to be able to be, satiated. They don't necessarily need an additional platform to watch other stuff.
That's why, like, Verve, I thought was a very good in-between spot, where it is you pay a fee, but then is, like, these services combined, right? And I don't really know how to solve this issue or if it can even be solved, but would it even be possible to sort of say, like, how about this genre of shows as an only plan?
Well, let's look at the extremes of the situation.
Sure,
then,
let's
right?
go.
Let's
do
say,
it.
for example, there is like no streaming platform, just one.
Yeah.
And that one platform has everything on there,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that would then further accentuate the saturation issue that we mentioned earlier, right? Where it's just you have such a huge database of stuff. How are you going to go around watching them? And then at the same time, it's like, if everything on there, if all the stuff is on there and you've already watched all the good stuff, what do consumers have as an alternative? On the other end, let's say that you have like the same studios, right? You have Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime, Amazon Prime Video. I mean, then you have High Dive, Crunchyroll, so on and so forth. And every platform has their own set of series. We're talking specifically anime. Right, it'll just get really confusing if you do like movies and live action stuff.
Let's not.
If it's just anime. So, for example, like Amazon Prime gets Naruto, right? Disney Plus gets Bleach. Crunchyroll gets like One Piece. It's almost like a draft. It's like let's say like
Right.
they all have their own specific roster, no crossovers whatsoever. Do you think that there's enough of a push for this kind of situation where an anime fan would subscribe to every platform?
No, I don't think that is a very feasible decision. I mean, I'm sure there are people who will do that, right? And for those people, I'm like, good for you. Like, honestly, like you have the ability to go to all these platforms.
But you're paying almost $70 to $100 a month just to be able to watch everything.
Exactly.
Right?
It's like that, like the currency of the human beings is what? Time, energy, and money. And if you are old, midlife, or an elderly, your the amount of time, energy, and money that you have is different in each of these three.
Speaking of which, by the time in your elderly life, in your 70s, you think you'll still be holding on to your Crunchyroll account? Or do you think Crunchyroll will still exist at that point?
You know what it would be? It would be directly in my like.
Crunchyroll will be merged with someone else, right? It'll be a Crunchy Netflix. Oh no, I don't want to imagine
Crunchy
that.
Flicks.
That would actually be terrible if that ever happened. Because then, like, who would do the
this Crunch Flicks?
No, here's the thing, because we already have issues with Netflix and their subtitle quality.
Yeah,
and Crunchyroll's not that great either. So when you merge the two together, then you have no subtitles.
Right. And I mean, like, look, I mean, this goes into a more like specific thing where people who we know who only have Netflix because that's just the way it is for them, and they're not willing to pay for Crunchyroll. Very fine and fine. You have every right to do that, right? But then when I go like, well, the subtitles is bad, and they're like, yeah, but it's not that bad to the point where I need to worry about it, or I got the overall gist, right? And it is really a different viewpoint that we have that others either don't care or don't mind. And sometimes I feel really conflicted because on one hand, I want to be as comprehensive as possible, but on the other hand, it's impossible to satiate the needs and requirements of every single person that would listen to this podcast. I mean, we've had issues of, well, are our listeners newcomers to anime and manga, or are they literally veterans that knows every trope, meme, and reference that we make, and they'll just get it right away, or it'll just fly over their heads? And it's just something that I have always been at the back of my mind. It's like, well, is the merger a good thing for Crunchyroll and Funimation? I guess, maybe, not really, I don't know. And I just want to sort of say, like, how is it possible? I mean, actually, I do know why, but the thought of all these studios shutting down or overworked, people losing their jobs, and how anime is bigger than ever and in many ways better than ever.
Not pretty subjective. There.
It is an extremely subjective view.
I'd
but
say
you
that,
can't say that people.
I'd say that the quality of anime is still pretty much the same, but it's the reach, right? It's the fact that like it's become more and more easily accessible that now people are paying more attention to it. So therefore, you have a larger group of people who give insight to it. You're hearing more voices, more opinions, and inevitably more reviews. The one thing I did want to pose though, right? So Danmachi, right? The anime that's doing
is it hard to pick up girls in a dungeon, something like that? Yeah.
So the first 3 seasons were on Crunchyroll, right?
I think so.
And did it end up not getting renewed on Crunchyroll, and therefore it's on High Dive now?
You see, that's the question. Okay, first of all, yes, it's on High Dive for season 4.
I don't know if it's actually also being on Crunchyroll too. I just remember there was a series that was previously on Netflix or Crunchyroll, and then it did not get renewed for those platforms, and instead High Dive picked up the license and continued the syndication of it. I think that's like sort of one thing. It's not so much like talking about from the streaming platform perspective, but from the studios and the people who hold the IPs. Like when you are in a situation where your product is no longer on a dedicated platform that you know is like known for just pure anime or pure live action or whatever it may be, and then you go into like a smaller platform or a platform where like let's be real, like there's not nearly as many people who have High Dive as opposed to having Crunchyroll.
Yeah. First of all, I checked on Crunchyroll's lineup. They do not have Danmachi.
So there you go. So then the license expired with Crunchyroll, and then afterwards, then it got renewed, picked up by High Dive.
Right.
So in effect, then, like, do you think that would have any effect on the fandom, or at least like
100%?
right?
I think it will.
You know, because you're subscribing to like a smaller fan base that have High Dive accounts compared to people who have Crunchyroll accounts.
I mean, it's very simple. I think the majority of them, well, I guess I won't watch season 4 then. That's literally the way. Just like my sister's like, it's not on Crunchyroll then, or not on Netflix, then I'm not going to watch it.
Like, is there enough of a push for people to be like, you know what? Maybe it is time for me to get a High Dive account.
Maybe,
You know?
maybe for some people for sure. But
I mean, I guess if you want to watch Takagi-san season 3 as well, right? Like, but again, it's that dilemma afterwards where, like, if you want to have your source readily available across multiple platforms, I'm sure that when it comes to license negotiations, you don't have as much wiggle room.
right.
You get paid whatever from this platform, you're going to get the same paid from that platform. You can't really negotiate there. But if you are going exclusively with certain platforms, there is an easier method to trying to get more bang for your buck, especially from the licensing studios.
I just feel like every single viewer only has that much time of the day in their lives to consume anything. In this case, strictly we're talking about anime or manga, right? But the studios can only produce a certain amount of work, and it can only be licensed by either all of them, some of them, or one of them, right? I wonder, obviously because we don't know for a fact, how does the studio feel about this break in license? Is it just, well, it's the way it is, so it's tough, but whatever. But I sincerely think that there is a portion of people that would be like, well, why isn't this on there? And instead, they might throw hate at the studio, even though they might have little to nothing to do about it. And then they'll be like, why isn't it on Crunchyroll? When in reality, it's like the license expired or they're not willing to pay up, but High Dive is willing to pay a better price. So technically, it can fund the studio better.
Well, that's also why then we have illegal streaming as well, right? If only it was that simple for people to understand. I would like to think that people can separate the licensing studios from the actual production studios.
Or just like there's executive committees, right? They're the ones who actually
just
earn the money.
Just because like you make an anime doesn't mean it's going to be on Crunchyroll, unfortunately, right? Just because you make a live action TV show doesn't mean it's going to be streamed on Netflix. That's just not always the case.
And
you have so many platforms. Sometimes you just give your property to the highest bidder, and if it's not Crunchyroll, Netflix, then whoever paid you more money, you're gonna take it.
And that's why Crunchyroll exclusives or Crunchyroll originals and Netflix exclusives are in many ways so aggressively sought after,
and also like paid the most too.
Exactly.
I mean, like, no further like examples than Squid Game and Stranger Things. The fact that like how much money it got, like, in terms of funding, like not just like for the whole production, but also like specific episodes. Like the amount of money they pumped into Stranger Things, fucking crazy.
It's like $1.5 million.
Amid a time when they've also lost 2 million subscribers over the past 2 quarters.
Yeah, and thinking about slashing prices on their plans or altering
Which
their
they
plans.
need to. I think they need to like go to more aggressive, maybe even desperate means to be able to like retain or even like bring back some of the people they've lost. I mean, one reason or another, I think it's also the fact that like with people now realizing that there is a world outside, and like even with COVID,
There's a world outside.
Even with COVID, you can still go out and have some semblance of a normal life. Maybe they just don't need as much Netflix time anymore, or they're also just realizing I don't need as many subscriptions. I'm just gonna pick and choose which ones I want, and if Netflix is on the chopping block, then off it goes. And I think it's also the other thing as well, where like people are starting to not have individual accounts and get more family accounts.
Yes.
But then Netflix is also trying to clamp that down by like IP tracing and all that, which then is also like getting into the whole invasion of like privacy, especially digital privacy. So that's
and then VPNs, and then what about that, right?
Very messy. So like I think we've already said, right? There really is no like one answer for all. It's too big an issue for us to just 2 weebs sitting here right now to take.
And we don't have all the numbers.
How we're going to fix Crunchyroll and Netflix,
right? Or anime. in general, right? But what about like alternative sources of funding? So we have witnessed Kickstarter
yeah.
with The Girl from the Other Side, Little Witch Academia from Studio Trigger. I mean, there's a Mononoke, not Princess Mononoke, but the horror series Mononoke is getting a film on Kickstarter. I think there is another one for Wit Studio for their 10th anniversary one. It is possible.
I just don't think it's sustainable.
You don't think so?
Well, because if it's community driven, yeah, there's going to be a point when that well runs dry, though. And in the end, like, as much as you want to be able to get the power of the people to help to push your projects, nothing is sweeter than getting that big fat corporate paycheck of however much money it is for you to run and build new projects. In the end, like, you can only go so far with just purely donations. I think it's just how many of these studios are really doing these, right? Like,
Not much, of course.
right?
Not many.
And so
Sorry.
therefore, and I think that makes sense. If like all of us look, if Mappa were to start doing this shit, I think we're in trouble at that point. We're a studio as big as Mappa is then going to like a funding program like Kickstarter or GoFundMe. Then I think we're like, what's going on with the industry, right? I think what studio wanted to do was something that was more of like a fresh approach and not necessarily dictated by big corporate, and be able to run a project based on what their vision was. And hey, look, they managed to do Girl from the Other Side. You know, we partially funded that. Not of course. By partially, I mean like 0.00001%. We're just a little dime within the ocean.
We're a Kickstarter donor.
Yes.
Yes.
So like I can definitely see the merits of it. I just don't like think it is a sustainable thing to do. And therefore it's like, if it's like a project based kind of thing where it's like a little bit here, a little bit there, fine. I don't ever want to see like studios as big as like Mappa
KyoAni.
or KyoAni. Well, KyoAni maybe if it's like
yeah.
for specific reasons. I mean, I could see Science Saru doing a Kickstarter,
Right.
right? But it's like when it comes to like it's trying to find that balance of just pushing out a product that you know that the masses will like, as opposed to pushing out an original or a passion project that you know you wouldn't be able to get past corporate, but you'd be able to get past to the fans who subscribe to your shit, right? Like I would be very happy to give a little bit of money to Eun Choi if she's going to put together a new anime, because as much as I felt that Yuri Deco was a disappointment, I still like the studio as a whole, and I would like to continue seeing them push the boundaries and make more like out of this world avant-garde shit, because I support the studio. But it only goes so far with like the support from your fans, from the donors of these funding programs. In the end, like unfortunately, it's big business. It's the big bucks that count.
I know, and as the more and more fans of anime increases, the pie gets larger and larger and larger, and people want more and more and more of that pie. On Netflix, I think you and I both agree that their Netflix exclusives in the past year or two, or maybe 3, have been overall a little lackluster.
Incredibly mediocre.
I think, like, what was it? Kataro Lives Alone was the only one that I think is, like, emphatically, empirically
good. But you
good.
could see how low production that one was.
Exactly.
And that somehow managed to eclipse Bubble, which is, like, the greatest, like, cast from a dictatorial
sounds
standpoint.
so expensive.
Right? Like, it must not be cheap to be able to book Sawano for your work, right? Or Tetsuo Araki to direct your work. Like, these are big names, and they also got some big name voice actors and actresses. But that shit was boring.
But you know what I think Netflix has done recently that I think from the anime front that they're very smart in, at least, is getting the license, not as a Netflix exclusive, or maybe they get the license to premiere it worldwide and then tack on the Netflix exclusive logo. So, for example, Uncle Isekai right now is mainly, or if not only, available on Netflix. I think Komi Can't Communicate is another one that was made outside of the Netflix bubble, but they got the license for it.
They just go back to Netflix in the end, huh? Even though we were talking about anime and manga and all that. I think because I understand, of course, that like with Netflix doing this as an approach, it's definitely good considering that being able to be relevant on all fronts is a good thing because that's what they are, right? They have so many different shows in different languages that they have to be able to find one formula or several formulas that can work for the region to region, culture to culture, creed to creed. But that's a given with the fact that Netflix was the first big mainstream streaming platform, and so therefore to see them make those efforts to be able to grow out their anime platform, I'd say despite it being like very mediocre, you have to at least applaud the effort they put into it.
Yeah. And I think if we go back from anime and go into manga, I think that one actually is a more dark horse in terms of being a very impactful industry because currently as it stands, the only place that you can really buy digital manga, again, yeah, you can buy physical, but like if we exclude that for the time being, the real only place is Bookwalker.
I mean, it's the same way where it's like, oh, if you don't want to stream, you can just buy DVDs, but it's like no one's fucking doing that.
Yeah,
It's
no.
much easier just to stream, right?
Right.
In the same way that, yeah, you could buy physical manga, but it's most people use their phones or use their computers to read their manga.
Right. And with Bookwalker, their prices for this is
Always your gripe about that, but you could say the same thing about Blu-rays.
yeah.
It's in the end, it's just you want like the real product, you're gonna have to pay a pretty penny for it, and you don't want to own the IP but be able to access it. Yeah, you can do it for cheaper, but good luck trying to find a region that you have access to it. So, it's great that we're able to get Manga Plus. It's for sure. There's a lot of other platforms.
I use
you can get
Azuki.
too. Yeah, and I use Mangamo as well, which is also free and legal too. So the thing with like the manga world is that it's still like there's a lot to catch up with in terms of being able to distribute globally on a digital level. And it's not and like for people saying, oh, people just don't really read as much manga. That's bullshit. Do you remember when you were talking about how many copies of manga that My Dress Up Darling sold after it aired? Millions.
Yeah.
Millions of people are still reading this shit. There's no way that people aren't reading manga. In fact, manga is popular more than ever. And it's because of the fact that the anime is coming out and being able to propel it. So you want to tell me that like no one's reading manga? No.
Do you know how
manga
many
sales are still high as shit every year?
Do you know how many times I personally have seen news stories of Chainsaw Man and Demon Slayer is on the New York Times bestseller list of all types of books, not just graphic novels and manga.
Real loud.
Sorry, I'm just
excited about talking about manga, right?
Yeah, I think you might have to adjust my volume for this
cool.
bits and pieces.
It's cool.
No, we don't
but
report on it because it's old news, but we do see it all the time, right? The fact that Chainsaw Man even now has transitioned to a digital platform shows Viz Media's not only acceptance,
it's their change in strategy.
Yeah.
Just trying to be able to maximize what they can get out of this property. It's not just down to here's a platform that we have manga you can buy, and here's a manga that was made by our publication. Check it out. No, it's also now it's like, oh, we know we got some good stuff. We're gonna be able to get it to you, but it's like you're gonna have to use this platform to do it. And one, it's good for Fujimoto because he gets much more transparency, and it's good for us because we get to access it for free, or we pay for it because you can buy digital copies of it. In the end, I think that the problems when it comes to the distribution of digital manga, that's something that the Manga Plus, Jump Plus platforms only came out in the last 4 years, and only properly started getting stuff on there 2 years ago, I would say. And that was when like you could start reading Chainsaw Man. I think around that time, that was like
I think Spy X Family.
That too.
Kaiju number 8, I think,
and
also.
now Mashal as well.
Right.
So there's definitely like an avenue for people to like want to yearn for more manga, and it's not just anime. I think now it's the reason why there's probably going to be more and more people reading manga is because, hey, spoiler alert, sometimes anime can be pretty mid. Sometimes the animes that come out outside of your typical sequels, it can be kind of dry. And so therefore, like you usually do, you just try and find a deep dive into the manga world and see, well, if there's nothing that's good right now, what can I expect from the Jump lineup that could potentially become a good anime series? That's where Chainsaw Man came out.
I mean,
that's where Mashal and Spy X Family came out.
Yeah, that's where Call of the Night. What was the other couple of ones? Blue Lock that I saw. Blue Period. I'm trying to see if there's another Blue something, but there isn't. There's a lot of these mangas, like even Dress Up Darling, where I read it and I was like, this has the potential to be a really good anime, and some ended up being very good, some not so good, right? So I guess sort of to round it all up, if you could be a prophet, Will, which direction do you see the future of anime and manga in like the next year or two, or even like 5 years?
That's it. I would say like in
5 years.
I would say the next year or two it would just be the same.
Same.
It would just be people trying to find ways to retain their subscriptions, be able to get more people to join. You would just find more exclusives showing up. In the end, though, I think like if you were to look beyond the 2 years and go like 5 years or maybe even 10 years, right?
Exactly, yeah.
You're going to see another M&A. You're going to see another company get merged or acquired, because that's just how business works. You want to elevate your own business. Sometimes you just got to buy out the competition. So I would not be surprised if there is ever any discussions between, say, for example, like Hulu and Netflix, or Disney Plus absorbs High Dive, something like that.
I think that's
I can guarantee you that in 5 years' time there will be another acquisition, and it would be Disney involved.
Yeah.
Right. And who knows? Like, we also don't know what the webtoon platform is going to look like in 5 years' time. Right. There's been a lot of interest in people not only doing manga, like anime adaptations of the manhwas. There's been like a long line of live adaptations of these webtoons and manhwas as well. So maybe Webtoon gets acquired. Maybe like there's gonna be a merger between two different manga streaming platforms, right? Maybe Azuki then gets bought up by someone else. Who knows? I would wager though that an acquisition is gonna come in 5 years' time, another big one, and not just like a small sort of like, oh, we're gonna partner up together and then we're going to put our catalogs. No, it's gonna be as big as like Sony, Funimation, Crunchyroll, Warner Bros. It's gonna be Warner Media. It's gonna be that big. And I think that it will probably happen. Yeah, 5 years. I would see it happen in 5 years.
Okay.
As for manga, on the other hand, like I think that we're still very much in the infancy of manga and Jump Plus. I think that Azuki only really came up like within the last year. It's very young. It's not like there's that much on there.
I think that's the more interesting area, because you never know with manga, because I didn't anticipate that anime would be this prevalent this fast. I knew like more people are going to adopt it over time, but the fact that Crunchyroll got bought and the fact that it merged with Funimation, to me, is such an earth-shattering news that I did not realize that over 8 to 10 years ago, I was watching this on this. I was watching Crunchyroll anime on there, and it was just this sort of whatever website that I've never heard of. That I'm like, oh, it just got ads. Okay, right. And then all of a sudden today, you cannot say anime streaming without mentioning Crunchyroll at all.
I think that if we go into the manga side, I mean, like Azuki, like they're not technically like Kodansha, but they're partnered with Kodansha
with a lot of their works,
right?
yes.
And then of course, Jump and Manga Plus being part of the shonen lineup. I would not imagine it to be crazy if those two publications, or if like Shikakugan throws their hat into the ring as well, and does like a pseudo merger platform, because it has happened before. The fact that it's like you have like all these different studios, and none of them are ever exclusive to producing a certain publications like anime. They're manga, right? They're never just like, oh, you guys are only ever going to do Jump stuff. You're only ever going to do stuff that is licensed by Kodansha. You're never only ever going to do Shakugan stuff. No. Manga is a little bit more, anime is a little more freeform, but manga, however, though, it's like you're never going to see other. Actually, no, is Attack on Titan's not on Jump Plus, right? Because it's Kodansha. Or did they get the licenses?
To my knowledge, it is on Crunchyroll Manga of all places.
Yeah. So you see One Punch Man on Jump Plus for sure, right? You'll see Naruto, you see Bleach, and all that, but you're not going to see Blue Lock,
No.
right? And you're not going to see Mashal on Azuki. But if you were to try and find some sort of aggregate platform,
Like Verve
I-
equivalent?
I wouldn't imagine. I would imagine that like the likes of Shogakukan and Kodansha and Shonen WSJ would essentially Shueisha more like actually create some sort of all-encompassing platform. It depends on how they choose to divvy up the stocks and like the actual like equity within the company. But it has happened. It has happened before. So let's see. It's a little less clear on how manga will go because it's still very much like, will print survive? Will digital take over? How successful will manga really be in the future? Will people actually stop reading and just watch more stuff? It's a little less clear. It's what's more clear is that anime is going to be here to stay. It just depends on what platforms are going to exist or get merged as time goes by.
And I think that is the end of our discussion for now on the current state.
It's never going to end, really.
It's not going to end. Of course it's not. But we will see maybe as like a time capsule thing, maybe a year or two down the road, how much has changed or nothing has changed at all, or could we see sort of future changes incoming?
Just we'll date back to this episode when the new merger comes up or when a new manga platform comes up. It's going to happen. It absolutely will happen. And it's not like what I'm saying is super prophetic either. It's
no,
like,
it isn't.
yeah.
No, but I like that kind of discussion because it is not necessarily very forward-facing. It's rather behind the scenes, nitty-gritty statistics and negotiation
well,
deals.
let's repose the question back to you then, right? Like, what do you want to see out of these streaming platforms? Because you talked about oversaturation, you talked about the limitations of going exclusive and forcing consumers to either also subscribe to your platform or be forced to cut certain subscriptions. Like, what do you want to see out of the streaming world in the coming years?
So I actually have been wrestling with that question in my mind, and there has to be this balance between the consumer, the companies, and the animators that produce the product, right? And the first thing that comes to my mind is timed exclusives rather than full exclusivity. So, for example, you get Komi Can't Communicate or Uncle Isekai, Netflix, you guys get it for a full year. Then afterwards, they have...
Or you could simulcast it, but once it's done, then every other platform can stream it.
Right.
Something like that.
Because usually the people who want it really badly would consume it as they go week by week, just like we do. And then once it's over, yeah, you would revisit it now and again, but we rarely revisit shows. A lot of people don't. So having the timed exclusive is, in my opinion, a much easier pill for the original licensor to be like, all right, fine, I'll release it after like a certain period of time. I mean, video games do that with certain properties. The other thing that I think is...
I mean, it's the same way where it's like you have a game that's on like the PlayStation Network or the Xbox market or the Switch market, and after a period of time, like let's say it's been out for a year or two, then you'd be like, okay, we still want to sell it to you, but we'll sell it to you for like 50% off. Here, 70%. Oh, have it for free. You have a subscription to us. In the same way where it's like, this anime has been out for 15 years. Maybe it's about time we just go ahead and just share it to everyone else. Like, everyone's already watched it, right? So here, have it for free. Or just like have it
for free.
have it your way.
Have it your way. Oh wow. Okay. The other thing that I would say is service convergence, which is like the Verve equivalent. And people will be like, yeah, but you're asking for something that's pie in the sky. Then I guess my concession there is, how about if it's just anime exclusive? So somehow, I don't know if it's even possible, but be like, you can only watch Netflix anime. You can't watch the live action stuff. And I don't even know if that's even a smart decision to segment it like that, but have a service that at least aggregates, as you said, whether it is anime or manga, from these various sources, and pay a lesser price than to have each individual subscription service. And the last one, which I think is a bit of a hot take is branding.
In what way?
So, for example, we have seen plenty of times. Actually, you know what? Devil's a Part-Timer Season 2 has that. It's clearly McDonald's, right?
Yeah.
Actually have McDonald's there.
McDonald's, yeah.
Right. But actually use McDonald's.
Yeah.
Or the Pocari Sweat equivalent. Do you know how many times we have seen, or Twitter, right? That name brand, and people having
Or
to say,
instead of saying Pocky, it's Pucka.
or instead of saying line, it's pine. But it's like, okay, clearly even the green, it's line. Okay.
Yeah.
And have it such that with these integrations, yeah, it's in many ways it's gonna suck because I don't want my
That is
company.
That is a hot take.
That is a hot take.
Because imagine like how censorship laws already exist in Japan, like the ball ache that the companies are gonna have to go through just to be able to greenlight the usage of McDonald's in their anime.
I'm not saying you have to, right?
I mean, I know where you're going at. It's just like you said though. It's by far the hardest thing.
It's
to do.
really hard. That's why I ended it last. But was it who sang the Jujutsu Kaisen Eve?
Yeah, Eve.
They did
Kikai-
they did a
Kitan, right?
lot, the chocolate company.
Latte.
Yeah, one of their music videos is just straight up an advertisement for their platform, but it's like a Valentine's Day music video.
And you seen those Kaguya commercials for the cup noodles? Hatmeido.
Yeah.
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 I don't know what it is in Japanese, but we also get that brand here in Hong Kong. I get it. Like those are like paid ad spots for sure, but it might not be that hard, like you were trying to say, to put a paid ad spot in the anime itself.
Right. Like
that sounds controversial.
right,
by
like
the way.
you drive down the highway and
then
then
you realize that every episode that starts up is like there will be paid advertising in this episode. They have to do that because if they already do that for YouTube, you best believe they're going to do it for an anime.
I'm not saying that this is a good idea. I'm just saying that this is an idea.
Yeah, I mean you're just throwing out solutions whether or not they work.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, the other one that I thought of was have more original anime, so then you can retain the rights and then have massive amounts of spin-offs and merchandise. And that one is a hard pill to swallow.
Not everyone can be 3 Hertz. Not everyone can be A1 Pictures. Okay, it's not everyone can be fucking PRO with Akudama Drive. It's as you've seen, right? It's incredibly fucking hard to make one, not let alone 2 or 3 or however many like original series. It could work, but in the end, that more helps to propel the studio itself as opposed to like. Where am I going with this?
I don't know.
I mean, like, do you think like that would be like a solution though to like your anime?
It could be a combination of a lot of different ideas and corporate sponsorship being a small portion, if any.
Yeah.
Right? I guess
I mean, like, if we're talking about anime originals, we did a whole episode on that before, and how hard it really is to do an anime original.
And do it well too. What about anime outsourcing?
Yeah.
I mean, it has already happened everywhere.
Yeah, Vietnam, South Korea.
And these people do good work.
Philippines.
And then that goes into the whole thing of, well, what is anime?
I mean, I remember like seeing enough series where like the credits roll and like the animators, like 50% of them aren't even Japanese. There's like a fan or a fung or a hoi in there. It's like there's a lot of there's a lot of Vietnamese animators and developers there too. It's just like you got to recognize where the hard work comes from. So I guess that's maybe just like our foresight into what anime will look like in the future. It again, we could be completely off the mark, but I don't think it's that crazy that we're going to see more originals. I don't think it's that crazy that we're going to see another merger or acquisition happening in the future.
Yeah, and stay tuned 2 years in the future when Will and I have this exact same conversation, but instead of anime and manga is light novels and visual novels.
You're not okay. Well,
oh yeah, I knew it. So that is the end of our Bits and Pieces number 9. You can always reach us through our email, jpal@gmail.com, JPALETTE, our handle @paletgood on Twitter, and our website, www.goodanimepalet.com, all one word. Our intro music is Relaxation Station by Magnus Ringblom, and our outro music is Golden Rules by Luax. Our royalty-free music was provided by Epidemic Sound. If you're interested, you can sign up using our referral link in the show description to get 10% off in the first 12 months and the first 30 days of subscription for free. Terms and conditions apply.
This is one of the heaviest BPs we've done in a while. I think like
And this was my backup.
I wasn't expecting it to be this heavy, but then when you pose the question of what do you see is the future of streaming for anime and manga, like that's wow. You ready to open up Pandora's box?
Yeah, that's why I went with the first take, and then I realized how shitty
the
that
thing
was.
Is, though, at least like with this, there's structure and there's direction with this. Like I know like how to answer it because it's not that crazy to talk about like what the future of anime streaming will be, like what it means to be able to access manga digitally. Whereas like the previous topic that we wanted to air, maybe we'll air sometime in the future if we do record it again. It's going to require just a tad bit of research, just a little bit, because damn, I was so fucking lost when you were going.
Yeah, we're not going to revisit that issue ever again. But it was pretty funny when I saw your face. Kind of,
it was painful.
It was super painful, wasn't it?
All right. Well, thanks very much, y'all, for listening to this. Hey, look, like if you ever want to talk about like how painful it is for you to choose between using High Dive, Crunchyroll, Netflix, Disney Plus, Hulu, Amazon Prime, or whatever platform you use to watch your anime and your, I suppose, live actions, drop us a note. We also want to hear your complaints and the struggles that you have to go through to be able to access that good old anime. Because even though we've got a fuck ton of subscriptions ourselves, we can't watch everything because Japan holds some of the good stuff too.
Yeah, and if you want to sort of,
like uncensored Harem's Labyrinth, wink wink,
the labs,
uncensored. Well, I don't know if I really want to watch Uncensored World and Harem because that's already still a bad show, even with the tits and ass.
Yeah, it is.
All right. So yeah, stay tuned for other bits and pieces where we mince words and talk shit about the industry
and pretend we know more than we do.
I would say that we do know a fair amount, but like again, don't take this for like actual advice. This is just for purely entertainment purposes
and speculative.
Exactly. Like if Crunchyroll calls me and says, "Do you think we're gonna get fucking acquired again?" It's like, no, I'm totally not saying that. I'm saying that it's a possibility.
What happens if Crunchyroll calls us and is like, "Yo, Will, Jason, you make some pretty interesting takes. How would you feel if you will be our VP of marketing?"
They come to us and say, "We heard what you said. Here's $10 million. Never say it again." It's like, okay, all right.
Well, actually, you won't hear it because we will never say it again.
Crunchyroll is a great company.
We are robots. All right.